In October 2023, Andrew Harrington, a man whose signature alone moved markets, walked into New York's most exclusive restaurant. He took one look at the waitress approaching his table and uttered 5 words that would destroy his reputation. Or so he thought. He demanded she be removed, claiming she wasn't worthy to pour his wine. But Andrew didn't know who she really was. He didn't know that the woman he just humiliated held the only key to saving his $4 billion empire from a fatal trap set by the very person sitting across from him. This is the true story of how a waitress brought a billionaire to his knees, not with a lawsuit, but with a napkin. The air inside l'Orangerie always smelled of old money, a specific mixture of mahogany polish, reduced truffle oil, and the terrified sweat of junior executives. It was a Tuesday night in Manhattan, the kind of rainy, slate-gray evening that made the golden glow of the restaurant feel like a sanctuary for the elite. Etta Sullivan smoothed the front of her starched white apron. Her hands were steady, though her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She had been working at l'Orangerie for only 3 weeks. In the hierarchy of high-end service, she was invisible, a ghost meant to glide between tables, refill water glasses, and disappear before the condensation marred the tablecloth. "Table 4 is yours tonight, Sullivan." Gustavo, the maitre d', whispered aggressively, shoving a leather-bound wine list into her hands. Gustavo was a man who believed stress was a management style. "And God help you if you mess this up. Do you know who is coming in?" Etta nodded, her eyes lowered. "Andrew Harrington." "Andrew Harrington," Gustavo repeated, savoring the syllables as if they were a rare cognac. "The CEO of Harrington Global, the man who bought the entire chaotic grain supply of the Midwest just to teach a competitor a lesson. He demands perfection. If he asks for water, it had better be room temperature. If he drops a fork, you catch it before it hits the floor. Do you understand?" "Yes, Gustavo," Etta said softly. She understood better than he knew. She didn't just know Andrew Harrington from the tabloids or the business section of the Times. She knew his depreciation schedules. She knew his offshore holding patterns in the Cayman Islands. She knew that in 2018 he had leveraged a buyout of a tech firm that technically didn't exist yet. Etta wasn't always a waitress. 5 years ago, she had been a forensic accountant at one of the Big 4 firms, a rising star with a mind like a steel trap for numbers. But one mistake, one ethical stand against a partner laundering money, had blacklisted her. They had destroyed her reputation, buried her under false lawsuits, and left her with nothing. Now she served soup to the people she used to audit. The heavy oak doors swung open. The dining room, usually a hum of polite conversation, fell into a hushed silence. Andrew Harrington entered. He was taller than he looked on television, wearing a charcoal bespoke suit that cost more than Etta's yearly rent. His silver hair was swept back, his face hard and angular, like a cliff face battered by the ocean. He didn't walk. He patrolled. On his arm was Lydia Roach. Etta's breath hitched. Lydia was Harrington's new chief financial officer, a shark in a red velvet dress. Lydia was the woman who had replaced the man Etta had tried to expose years ago. Seeing them together was like watching 2 storms colliding. Gustavo bowed so low he nearly head-butted the hostess stand. "Mr. Harrington, Madame Roche, your usual table in the alcove is ready." Andrew didn't acknowledge Gustavo. He simply kept walking, his eyes scanning the room with bored disdain. They sat at table 4. The power table. Etta took a deep breath. She grabbed the bottle of sparkling water, San Pellegrino, chilled to exactly 45 degrees, and approached. "Just do the job," she told herself. "You are nobody. You are a ghost." She reached the table. "Good evening, sir. Madame, would you care to start with—" Andrew Harrington looked up. For a second, the bustling restaurant vanished. His ice-blue eyes locked onto hers. He didn't look at her face. He looked at her wrist, specifically at a small, faded burn scar shaped like a crescent moon on her right forearm, a souvenir from a cooking accident in her small apartment the week prior. His lip curled. It was a micro-expression, instantaneous and cruel. He raised a hand, cutting her off mid-sentence. "Stop," Andrew said. His voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of a gavel strike. Etta froze. The bottle hovered over the crystal glass. "Sir?" Andrew turned his head slowly toward Gustavo, who was hovering a few feet away. He didn't shout. He didn't make a scene. He simply pointed a manicured finger at Etta. "Get this person away from my table," Andrew said, his tone flat. "I come here to eat, not to be serviced by damaged goods. Look at her arm. It's unhygienic. It's repulsive." The restaurant went deadly silent. A fork clattered onto a plate 3 tables away. Lydia Roche laughed, a tinkling, cruel sound. "Oh, Andrew, don't be so dramatic. She's just the help." "I don't care," Andrew snapped, still looking at Gustavo, refusing to even make eye contact with Etta anymore. "I am about to close the most important merger of the decade. I require excellence. This woman looks like she just crawled out of a back alley fight. Remove her. Send me someone who understands presentation." Etta felt the blood drain from her face. It wasn't the insult to her appearance that stung. She had tough skin. It was the sheer, unadulterated arrogance, the assumption that her humanity was secondary to his aesthetic experience. Gustavo was beside her in an instant, his hand gripping her elbow hard enough to bruise. "I am so terribly sorry, Mr. Harrington," Gustavo sputtered, sweating. "A roster error. She is new, incompetent. It won't happen again. Leave, Sullivan, now." Etta looked at Andrew. For a moment, she wanted to scream. She wanted to tell him that his Q3 earnings were inflated by a variable interest entity that was about to collapse. She wanted to tell him that the woman sitting across from him was playing him for a fool. But she didn't. She was a waitress. "My apologies, sir," Etta said, her voice steady, possessing a dignity that seemed to confuse Andrew for a split second. She turned and walked to the kitchen. The heavy swinging doors closed behind her, muting the murmur of the crowd. "You're done," Gustavo hissed, following her in. "Pack your things. You embarrassed me in front of Harrington. Get out." "Fine," Etta said, untying her apron. She felt a strange calm settling over her. But as she threw the apron into the laundry bin, the kitchen door swung open slightly. Through the gap, she had a clear line of sight to table 4. Andrew had opened a blue leather folder on the table. Lydia was leaning in, tapping a long fingernail on a document. Etta squinted. Her eyes, trained for years to spot anomalies in spreadsheets from across a boardroom, locked onto the papers. The header of the document was visible. Project Icarus, Asset Liquidation Strategy. And below that, a graph. Etta's heart stopped. She knew that graph. She recognized the jagged downward slope. It wasn't a merger document. It was a divestment schedule. Lydia Roche wasn't helping Andrew buy a company. She was tricking him into signing over his voting rights under the guise of a tax shelter. If Andrew signed that paper tonight, he wouldn't just lose the deal. He would lose his entire company by morning. Etta looked at the back exit, then back at the billionaire, who had just called her damaged goods. He deserved to lose it. He was a monster. But Etta Sullivan had a flaw, one that had destroyed her career 5 years ago. She couldn't stand to see the numbers lie. "I said get out!" Gustavo barked, pointing toward the employee lockers. Etta ignored him. She walked over to the service station, where the busboys kept the spare napkins and pens. "Sullivan, are you deaf?" "I'm leaving, Gustavo," Etta said, her voice surprisingly cold. "But first, I'm going to drop off the check." "They haven't even ordered yet." "Not for the food," Etta muttered. She grabbed a pristine white linen napkin. She took a heavy black marker from her pocket, the one she used to label expiration dates on milk cartons. She pressed the marker to the linen. The ink bled slightly, but the letters were bold and stark. She didn't write a sentence. She wrote a formula. EBITDA. Capex was a delta WC. Der neck-free. Cash flow. Below that, she wrote 3 words. Check page 14. It was the accountant's version of a scream for help. It was the formula that proved a company was hiding losses in its working capital. It was the exact method Lydia Roach had used to frame Etta 5 years ago. Etta folded the napkin so the writing was hidden. She placed it on a silver tray. "I'm taking this to them," she said. Gustavo blocked her path. "Over my dead body. You are fired. If you go back out there, I'll call the police for trespassing." Etta looked Gustavo in the eye. "If you don't let me deliver this, Andrew Harrington is going to lose $400 million in the next hour. And when he finds out, you stopped the person who tried to warn him, he won't just fire you, Gustavo. He will ensure you never work in a town with a zip code again." Gustavo hesitated. The specificity of the threat rattled him. In that second of doubt, Etta slipped past him. She walked back into the dining room. The atmosphere had shifted. Andrew was holding a fountain pen, hovering over the document. Lydia was smiling, a predatory, tight-lipped smile. "Just here, Andrew," Lydia was purring. "It secures the tax loophole before the fiscal quarter ends. Standard procedure." "It feels rushed, Lydia," Andrew grumbled, though he lowered the pen to the paper. "My legal team hasn't vetted the addendum. Legal takes weeks," Lydia pressed, her hand touching his arm. "The market moves in minutes. Do you want to be a leader or a bureaucrat?" The tip of the pen touched the paper. Etta didn't approach like a waitress this time. She approached like a linebacker. She moved with speed, bypassing the etiquette of approaching from the left. She slammed the silver tray down on the table with a clatter that made Andrew jump. The pen skidded across the paper, leaving a streak of ink but no signature. "What is the meaning of this?" Andrew roared, looking up. "I told you to—" "Your water, sir," Etta said loudly, interrupting him. She didn't have water. She had the folded napkin. She slid it directly over the document he was about to sign, covering the signature line. "Get security!" Lydia shrieked, standing up. "She's insane!" 2 large security guards near the entrance started moving toward the table. Gustavo was right behind them, looking pale. Andrew looked at Etta, really looked at her. He saw the fire in her eyes. It wasn't the look of a disgruntled employee. It was the look of someone watching a train wreck. "One look," Etta said, her voice dropping to a whisper only Andrew could hear. "Look at the napkin, then throw me out." The guards were 10 feet away. "Wait," Andrew held up a hand, halting the security team. He looked down at the napkin. He picked it up. He unfolded it. He stared at the black marker. "EBITDA, Capex, plot source delta to WC, 1 neck free, cash flow check, page 14. Andrew Harrington was arrogant, but he was a mathematician by training. He stared at the equation. It was basic, elementary even. But in the context of a merger, it was an accusation. It suggested that the cash flow wasn't coming from profit. It was coming from draining the company's operating assets. He looked at Lydia. She was staring at the napkin, and for the first time her composure cracked. Her left eye twitched. "What is this trash?" Lydia demanded, reaching for the napkin. "Andrew, give it to me." Andrew pulled the napkin back. He didn't look at Lydia. He looked at the document on the table. The blue folder. He turned to page 14. The text was dense, filled with legal jargon, but halfway down the page, buried in a footnote about ancillary liabilities, was a clause regarding working capital adjustments. Andrew pulled a gold-rimmed pair of reading glasses from his pocket. He read the clause. Then he did the mental math. If he signed this, the assets he was buying would immediately be reclassified as liabilities to cover a debt he didn't know existed. He slowly closed the folder. The silence at the table was heavier than lead. Andrew looked up at Etta. She was standing there, hands clasped, the scar on her arm visible under the chandelier light. "Who are you?" Andrew asked. His voice was no longer dismissive. It was curious, dangerous. "I'm just the waitress you refused to be served by," Etta said, "because I'm not worthy." "Andrew, please," Lydia said, her voice rising in pitch. "This is a stunt. She's probably a corporate spy sent by your rivals. Look at her. She's a nobody." Andrew ignored Lydia. He kept his eyes on Etta. "You know what this formula implies?" "I do," Etta said. "It implies that the company you're acquiring is technically insolvent. They're cooking the books by capitalizing their expenses. If you sign that, you're buying a corpse." "Andrew!" Lydia slammed her hand on the table. Andrew stood up. He was a tall man, and when he stood, he cast a long shadow. He picked up the blue folder. "Lydia," Andrew said softly, "why does page 14 reference a shell company in Panama that I've never heard of?" Lydia's face went white. That is standard administrative." "Get out," Andrew said. "Andrew, you can't be serious." "I said, get out." Andrew's voice boomed, shaking the glassware. "Before I have you arrested for securities fraud right here in the pasta course." Lydia looked at Andrew, then at Etta. She grabbed her clutch, shot a look of pure venom at the waitress, and stormed out of the restaurant, her heels clicking like gunshots on the hardwood. Andrew stood alone at the table. He looked at the contract, then he ripped it in half. He turned to Gustavo, who was trembling by the wine rack. "Manager," Andrew said. Yes, Mr. Harrington?" "Bring another chair," Andrew said, "and a fresh glass." For who, sir?" Andrew gestured to the waitress in the cheap uniform. "For her. She's dining with me." Etta took a step back. "Sir, I can't. I'm working. And frankly, I don't want to have dinner with you." The restaurant went silent again. Nobody said no to Andrew Harrington. Andrew looked stunned. Then a slow, dry chuckle escaped his lips. "I tried to have you fired," he admitted. "I insulted you, and you just saved me $400 million. Please, sit down. I don't want to dine with you, Miss Sullivan," she said. "Miss Sullivan, I don't want to dine with you. I want to hire you. But first, you have to tell me how a waitress at l'Orangerie knows forensic accounting better than my own CFO." Etta hesitated. She looked at the empty chair. She looked at her stain-covered apron. She slowly untied the apron, letting it fall to the floor. Underneath, she wore a simple black blouse and slacks. "I charge by the hour, Mr. Harrington," Etta said. "I can afford it," Andrew replied. She sat down, but as the waiter poured her wine, her hand trembling slightly as she lifted the glass, Etta knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Lydia Roach was not the kind of woman who walked away, and Andrew Harrington had secrets that even a balance sheet couldn't hide. As Etta took her first sip, she noticed a man at the bar watching them. He was wearing a trench coat, and he wasn't eating. He was speaking into a small microphone on his lapel. She had saved the billionaire, but she had just put a target on her own back. Andrew Harrington did not finish his dinner. He signaled for the check, threw a black American Express card on the table, and looked at Etta. "My office," he said. We can't talk here. You saw him, didn't you? The man at the bar, Etta asked, picking up her purse. Grey trench coat. He's been nursing the same scotch for 40 minutes, but the ice hasn't melted. It's a prop. Andrew's eyebrows rose. You are observant. I told you, Mr. Harrington, I audit people. I look for things that don't add up. They exited l'Orangerie through the kitchen, bypassing the paparazzi that had begun to gather out front, tipped off, no doubt, by Lydia Roche. Andrew's personal driver, a mountain of a man named Hugo, had the black Maybach idling in the alleyway. The drive to Harrington Tower was silent. The city lights blurred past the tinted windows, painting streaks of neon across Etta's tired face. She felt like Cinderella in reverse. The ball was over, but she wasn't going back to the ashes. She was going into the dragon's den. Harrington Tower pierced the Manhattan skyline like a shard of obsidian. They took the private elevator to the 90th floor. The doors opened directly into Andrew's sanctuary, a sprawling office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire financial district. Drink? Andrew asked, walking to a crystal decanter. Coffee, Etta said. Black. If we are going to do this, I need to be sharp. Andrew poured himself a bourbon and pressed a button on his desk. A hidden panel in the wall slid open, revealing a massive server bank and 3 large monitors. Show me, Andrew commanded. Show me what Lydia was hiding. Etta sat in the leather executive chair. It was comfortable, worth more than her car. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. I need access to the Ventura Holdings shared drive, she said. That's the subsidiary Lydia was using for the merger, right? Access granted, Andrew said, typing in a master override code. Etta went to work. For 20 minutes, the only sound in the room was the rapid-fire clacking of mechanical keys and the hum of the servers. Andrew watched her. He saw the way her eyes darted across the data streams, how she muttered to herself, cross-referencing tax ID numbers with offshore routing codes. Here, she said suddenly. She pointed to a line of code on the screen. Do you see this vendor? Apex Solutions. I know them, Andrew said, stepping closer. They handle our IT logistics. We pay them $3 million a quarter. No, Etta corrected him. You pay them $3 million a quarter. But look at the routing number for the payments. Andrew squinted. It goes to a bank in Zurich. And from Zurich, Etta tapped a few more keys, bringing up a deeper layer of the transaction history. It bounces to the Cayman Islands, and then it comes right back to New York, specifically to a real estate holding company called Roche Estates. Andrew went still. Lydia is paying herself with my money? It's worse than theft, Andrew, Etta said, using his first name for the first time. It's a leverage buyout. She's using your own capital to buy up debt in your name. Project Icarus wasn't about selling the company. It was about defaulting on the loans she secretly took out. If you had signed that paper tonight, the default clauses would have triggered immediately. And she would have owned the company, Andrew whispered, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. She would have owned the debt, Etta corrected, which means she would have owned you. Andrew sat heavily on the edge of his mahogany desk. He looked old suddenly. The Titan of Wall Street, the man who moved markets with a whisper, had been played by the woman sharing his bed. Why? Andrew asked. I gave her everything. The CFO position, stocks, power. Etta looked away, staring out at the city lights. Because power isn't enough for people like Lydia. They need control, and... Etta hesitated. She didn't do this alone. What do you mean? The math, Etta said, pointing to the screen. It's too clean. Lydia is smart, but she's aggressive. This structure, this is elegant. It's quiet. This is the work of a ghost accountant. Someone who specializes in erasing money so thoroughly that even the IRS forgets it existed. Andrew looked at her. Someone like you? Etta met his gaze. Someone like who I used to be, before Lydia destroyed me. Andrew frowned. Tell me, what happened 5 years ago? I know the rumors. They said you embezzled from the pension fund. I didn't embezzle, Etta said, her voice shaking with suppressed rage. I found a hole in the pension fund. $5 million missing. I reported it to the partner in charge. That partner was Lydia Roach. 2 days later, a mysterious deposit appeared in my personal bank account. Then the police arrived. Lydia testified against me. I lost my license. I lost my fiancé. I lost everything. Andrew's face hardened. He swirled the amber liquid in his glass. So, tonight wasn't just about saving me. It was revenge. It was justice, Etta said. There's a difference. Suddenly the computer screen flashed red. A siren wailed from the speakers, a harsh, digital shriek. Unauthorized access detected. System purge initiated. What did you do? Andrew shouted. I didn't do anything. Etta's fingers flew across the keys. Someone is remote accessing the server. They know we're in here. They're wiping the drives. Stop it. I can't stop it. I have to copy it. Etta grabbed a portable hard drive from Andrew's desk and jammed it into the USB port. Come on, come on. The progress bar crawled. 10%. 20%. They're deleting the emails first, Etta yelled over the alarm. The proof of the wire transfers. 40%. They're locking me out of the admin controls. Cut the power, Andrew yelled. Pull the plug. If I pull the plug, the data corrupts, Etta argued. I need 10 seconds. 80%. 90%. The screen went black. The siren stopped. Etta slumped back in the chair, breathing hard. She pulled the hard drive out. Did we get it? Andrew asked, sweating. Etta looked at the drive in her hand. We got fragments. Enough to prove fraud, maybe, but not enough to convict the mastermind. Lydia? No, Etta said, standing up. Lydia is the face. But the person who just tried to wipe this server, that was a professional hacker. Lydia doesn't know how to code a kill switch. Andrew walked to the window. He looked down at the street, 90 stories below. Then who are we fighting? Etta joined him at the window. She looked down and saw a familiar sight. Across the street, standing under a street lamp, was the man in the grey trench coat. He was looking up, directly at Andrew's office window. He raised a phone to his ear, nodded once, and walked away into the darkness. We're fighting a shadow, Etta said, and I think I know where he lives. The sun was rising over the East River when Andrew's driver dropped Etta off at her apartment building in Queens. It was a stark contrast to the penthouse, red brick, peeling paint, the smell of damp cardboard in the lobby. Wait here, Hugo, Etta told the driver. I just need to grab a change of clothes and my laptop. Mr. Harrington instructed me not to let you out of my sight, Miss Sullivan, Hugo rumbled. I'll be 5 minutes. Unless you want to come into a 4th floor walk-up with no elevator? Hugo grunted and stayed in the car. Etta climbed the stairs, her legs heavy. Adrenaline was fading, replaced by exhaustion. She unlocked her door, number 4B. As soon as she pushed the door open, she knew something was wrong. The air smelled different. It smelled of cologne. Cheap, musky cologne. She flipped the light switch. Her apartment had been tossed. Her mattress was slashed. Her drawers were pulled out, clothes scattered everywhere. Her bookshelf, where she kept her accounting textbooks, was overturned. But it wasn't a robbery. Her TV was still there. Her laptop, sitting on the small kitchen table, was untouched. Etta walked slowly toward the laptop. She sensed a trap. She opened the lid. A video file was queued up on the screen. She pressed play. It was footage from a security camera. L'orangerie, the kitchen. It showed Etta standing over the soup tureen earlier that night. But the video had been doctored. It showed her taking a small vial from her pocket and pouring it into the soup destined for Andrew's table. Etta gasped. It was a deep fake, a high-quality one. "Police!" The shout came from the hallway. Before Etta could react, her front door was kicked in. 4 officers in tactical gear stormed the tiny apartment. "Hands in the air! Get on the ground!" "I didn't do anything!" Etta screamed, dropping to her knees. A detective in a rumpled suit walked in behind the SWAT team. He looked around the trashed apartment with a sneer. He walked over to the kitchen counter, lifted a sugar jar, and poured it out. A small plastic bag with white powder fell out of the sugar. "Well, well," the detective said, holding it up. "Arsenic. Attempted murder of a billionaire. That's a heavy charge, sweetheart." "That's not mine," Etta cried as they cuffed her hands behind her back. "I've never seen that before." "Save it for the judge," the detective said. "Etta Sullivan, you are under arrest for the attempted poisoning of Andrew Harrington and corporate espionage." They dragged her down the stairs. Out on the street, neighbors watched from their windows. Hugo, the driver, stepped out of the Maybach, looking confused. He reached for his phone to call Andrew, but a police officer blocked him. "Stay back, sir. This is a crime scene." Etta locked eyes with Hugo as they shoved her into the back of a squad car. "Tell him," she screamed. "Tell him it's the shadow." The door slammed shut. Andrew Harrington was in a meeting with his legal team when his phone buzzed. It was Hugo. "Mr. Harrington, the police just took her." Andrew went cold. "Took who?" "Miss Sullivan. They found poison in her apartment. They're saying she tried to kill you." The lawyers around the table stopped talking. "Poison?" Andrew repeated. He looked at the half-empty glass of water on his desk, the water Etta had poured for him hours ago in the office. He hadn't died. "It's a setup," Andrew said, standing up. "Sir," his chief counsel, a man named Sterling. "Wait, no, Sterling is banned. Let's use Preston. No, wait, used Preston Gentry. Let's use Whitaker." "Sir," Whitaker said cautiously, "if the police have evidence, you need to distance yourself. If she did try to poison you." "She saved my company." Andrew slammed his fist on the table. "If she wanted me dead, she would have let me sign that contract and jump off a bridge when the stock tanked. Get the car." "Where are we going?" "The 19th precinct. I'm getting my accountant back." Andrew didn't just walk into the police station, he invaded it. He brought 4 lawyers, a PR crisis manager, and an attitude that could curdle milk. He found Etta in an interrogation room, handcuffed to a table. She looked small, exhausted, and terrified. The detective was shouting at her, slamming photos of the poison on the table. "Enough!" Andrew barked, entering the room. The detective spun around. "You can't come in here. This is an active investigation." "I am the alleged victim," Andrew said, smoothing his tie. "And I am telling you, I was not poisoned. I feel fantastic. In fact, I have never felt better." "We found arsenic in her apartment, Mr. Harrington, and a video of her dosing your soup." "I saw the soup," Andrew lied smoothly. "She never touched it. And that video? I have experts who can prove it's a fabrication within the hour. Now, unlock her, or I will sue this precinct for unlawful arrest, defamation, and emotional distress so severe you'll be paying me until the sun burns out." The detective hesitated. He looked at Andrew's lawyers, who were already drafting papers on their tablets. "I can't just release her. Bail has to be set." "Set it," Andrew said. "I don't care about the zeros. Just write the number." 2 hours later, Etta walked out of the precinct, blinking in the sunlight. Andrew was waiting by the car. She didn't say thank you. She walked right up to him. "They took my laptop," she said. But they didn't take the hard drive. I hid it in the one place they wouldn't look. Andrew looked at her, impressed. Where? Taped to the inside of the toilet tank in my apartment. We have to go back. No, Andrew said. Lydia knows where you live. You're not going back there. You're staying with me. Etta stopped. I am not your mistress, Andrew. I know, Andrew said, opening the car door for her. You're my weapon, and I don't leave my weapons unguarded. For 3 days, Etta lived in Andrew's penthouse. It wasn't a vacation, it was a war room. They had retrieved the hard drive. Etta had spent 48 hours decoding the fragments of data she had managed to save before the server wipe. It was a puzzle, a labyrinth of shell companies. But Etta Sullivan was a minotaur in this maze. She found the thread. I found him, Etta said on the 3rd night. She was wearing one of Andrew's silk robes, her hair tied up in a messy bun with a pencil. Andrew looked up from a stack of affidavits. Lydia? No, the puppet master, the man in the trench coat. She turned the monitor around. Viktor Kovic, an ex-intelligence officer from Eastern Europe turned corporate mercenary. He specializes in hostile liquidations. Basically, companies hire him to destroy their rivals from the inside. And who hired him to destroy me? Andrew asked. The money trail ends at a holding company called Nebula Ventures, Etta explained. It's a dead end on paper, but I cross-referenced the IP address used to authorize the server wipe. And? It came from a physical location in Brooklyn, a warehouse in the Navy Yard. It's registered to a logistics company that doesn't exist. Andrew stood up. If Kovic is there, Lydia might be there too. We should call the FBI, Etta said. The FBI will take months to build a case, Andrew said, checking his watch. The merger deadline is tomorrow morning. If we don't expose this by the time the market opens, the rumors of the investigation alone will tank my stock. I need a confession. Tonight. You're going there? Etta asked, incredulous. Andrew, Kovic is a killer. You're a mathematician. I'm a businessman, Andrew said, putting on his jacket. And I'm going to negotiate. Not without me, Etta said. Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. I'm the only one who understands the data, Etta argued. If you walk in there and accuse them of the wrong thing, they'll laugh at you. You need me to connect the dots in front of their faces so they know they're beaten. Andrew looked at her. He saw the same fire he had seen in the restaurant. The fire that had saved him. Fine, he said. But stay behind, Hugo. The warehouse was a rusted hulk of iron and brick on the waterfront. The wind howled off the East River, rattling the corrugated metal doors. Andrew, Etta, and Hugo approached on foot. The Maybach was parked a block away to avoid detection. There's a light on, Hugo whispered, pointing to a second-story window. Hugo forced the side door open. It wasn't locked. A bad sign. It meant they were expected. They moved through the dark ground floor, navigating around crates of rotting machinery. The smell of diesel and damp wood was overpowering. They climbed a metal staircase to the office level. Andrew pushed the office door open. It wasn't an office. It was a command center. Banks of servers hummed against the wall. Maps of Manhattan were taped to the glass partitions, and sitting in the center of the room, behind a metal desk, was Lydia Roach. She looked tired. Her perfect hair was frayed, her makeup smudged. She was holding a cigarette with a trembling hand. Standing behind her, cleaning his fingernails with a knife, was Viktor Kovic, the man in the trench coat. "Hello, Andrew," Lydia said, her voice hollow. "I told Kovic you would come. You never could resist a puzzle." "It's over, Lydia," Andrew said, stepping into the room. Hugo moved to block the door, but Kovic just smiled. Is it? Lydia laughed bitterly. You have a corrupted hard drive and a waitress with a criminal record. I have the board of directors in my pocket. We have the IP trace, Etta spoke up, stepping out from behind Andrew. We know this is where the kill switch originated, and we know about the account in Zurich. Kovic looked at Etta. Smart girl. Too smart. Who are you working for, Lydia? Andrew demanded. You didn't set this up. You're not this clever. Lydia flinched. He promised me the CEO chair. He said you were getting old, Andrew, that you were soft. Who? Me. A voice boomed from the shadows of the corner. A figure stepped into the light. A man in a wheelchair, nursing a glass of red wine. Andrew froze. Uncle Julian? Andrew gasped. Wait, Julian is banned. Let's check the list. Yes, Julian is banned. Quick fix. Uncle Silas? No, Silas is banned. Uncle Richard? Banned. Uncle Edward? Uncle Edward? Andrew gasped. Edward Harrington was 80 years old. He was the founder of the company, the man who had handed the reins to Andrew 10 years ago. He was supposed to be retired in the Hamptons, painting watercolors. Hello, boy, Edward rasped. You look surprised. You did this, Andrew stammered. Why? It's your legacy. It was my company, Edward shouted, his frail voice suddenly powerful. I built it from dirt, and you turned it into a charity. Sustainable energy? Ethical sourcing? You were ruining my margins, Andrew. I wanted a shark, and I got a dolphin. Edward wheeled himself closer. So I hired Mr. Kovic to gut the company, sell the parts, and give me the cash. Lydia was just the key to the lock. I trusted you, Lydia whispered, looking at Edward. You said I would run what was left. I lied, Edward sneered. Kovic, tie them up. We're going to burn the building down. An unfortunate electrical fire. Tragic loss of the CEO and his little girlfriend. Kovic stepped forward, the knife glinting. Hugo lunged. It was a blur of motion. Hugo was big, but Kovic was trained. Kovic sidestepped Hugo's punch and drove a knee into the driver's gut. Hugo went down, gasping. Andrew charged, but Kovic backhanded him with the handle of the knife, sending the billionaire sprawling across the floor, blood trickling from his temple. Etta stood alone. Kovic turned to her. He smiled, a cold, shark-like grin. Last chance, accountant, Kovic said. Can you calculate your odds of survival? Etta looked at Kovic. Then she looked at the server rack behind him, specifically at the cooling unit filled with pressurized water. 0, Etta said. For you. She grabbed a heavy metal paperweight from the nearest desk and didn't throw it at Kovic. She threw it at the sprinkler valve above the server rack. Clang! The valve sheared off. A high-pressure jet of water blasted directly into the open server banks. Zzzt! Sparks showered the room like fireworks. The servers short-circuited with a deafening pop. The lights in the warehouse exploded. Darkness. My data! Edward screamed. My money! Run! Etta yelled, grabbing Andrew's arm. They scrambled toward the door in the pitch black, Hugo groaning and stumbling after them. Kovic was shouting, firing a gun blindly into the dark. Bang! Bang! The muzzle flashes illuminating the chaos like strobe lights. A bullet pinged off the metal railing inches from Etta's head. They burst out onto the metal catwalk and ran down the stairs, the smell of ozone and smoke chasing them. They hit the cool night air and didn't stop running until they reached the Maybach. Hugo, clutching his ribs, threw the car into gear. They peeled away, just as flames began to lick the windows of the second floor. Andrew sat in the back seat, holding a handkerchief to his bleeding head. He looked at Etta. She was shaking, her hands covered in soot. You destroyed the evidence, Andrew said. The servers are gone. We have no proof. Etta reached into her pocket. She pulled out a small, blinking flash drive. "I didn't need the servers," she panted. "While you were talking to your uncle, I plugged this into Lydia's laptop on the desk. It has a keylogger. It captured her password when she logged in to show you the map." She held up the drive. "I have her login. We can access the cloud backups from anywhere. We have them, Andrew. We have them all." Andrew looked at the drive, then at Etta. "Remind me," he said, a small smile breaking through the blood on his face. "Never to make you angry." Etta slumped back against the leather seat. "Just pay the bill, Mr. Harrington." But as they drove back toward the city, Etta knew it wasn't over. Edward Harrington was a powerful man. He wouldn't go to jail quietly, and Kovich was still out there. They had won the battle, but the war was just beginning. The morning sun did not bring relief. It brought a media hurricane. By 8 a.m., the news cycle was dominated by one story. Harrington Global CEO Andrew Harrington wanted for questioning in warehouse arson. Edward Harrington had moved faster than they anticipated. From his hospital bed, where he had checked himself in claiming chest pains induced by his nephew's erratic behavior, he had spun a narrative of betrayal. He claimed Andrew had embezzled funds, burned the evidence, and kidnapped a waitress to use as a hostage. Andrew sat in a safe house in upstate New York, a cabin owned by his old college roommate. He watched the news on a muted television, his face pale. "It's over," Andrew said, his voice devoid of its usual power. "He's won. The board is holding an emergency vote at noon to strip me of the CEO title. Once I'm out, Edward controls the narrative and the assets. I'll spend the rest of my life fighting legal battles from a cell." Etta was in the kitchen, typing furiously on a borrowed laptop. She didn't look up. "Stop whining," she said. Andrew blinked. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. Stop whining. You're a billionaire. Act like one." Etta hit the enter key with a satisfying snap. "I just cracked the encryption on Lydia's cloud backup. We have everything. The emails between Edward and Kovich, the wire transfers, the blueprint for the arson." "It doesn't matter," Andrew said, pacing. "The police have an arrest warrant for me. If I step foot in the city, I'll be handcuffed before I can speak." "Then don't go to the police," Etta said, standing up. She looked transformed. She had washed the soot from her face and borrowed a crisp white shirt from the cabin's closet. She looked like the auditor she was born to be. "We go to the shareholders." "The meeting is in 3 hours," Andrew said. "At the tower. The place is swarming with NYPD and Edward's private security." "Exactly," Etta smiled. "They're looking for a fugitive sneaking in the back door. They aren't looking for the front door." "I don't understand." Etta grabbed her coat. "Edward thinks numbers are just money. He forgot that numbers are also truth. And truth, it's the only thing louder than money." 11:55 a.m. Harrington Tower. The boardroom was packed. 20 of the most powerful investors in the world sat around the long oak table. At the head sat Edward Harrington, looking frail and sympathetic in his wheelchair, an oxygen tube in his nose for effect. "It breaks my heart," Edward wheezed into the microphone, "to see my own flesh and blood fall so low. But for the good of the company, we must sever ties. Andrew is unstable, dangerous." "All in favor of removing Andrew Harrington as CEO?" the general counsel asked. Hands began to rise. Boom! The double doors to the boardroom didn't open. They were thrown open. Andrew Harrington strode in. He wasn't hiding. He was wearing a fresh suit, flanked not by lawyers but by Hugo, who sported a black eye, and Etta Sullivan, who carried nothing but a tablet. "Andrew!" Edward shouted, dropping the frail act for a second. "Security! Seize him!" 2 guards moved forward. "If you touch him," Etta's voice rang out, clear and piercing, You will be named as co-conspirators in a RICO indictment by the end of the day." The guards hesitated. The word RICO had a way of freezing people. "This is a private meeting," Edward roared. "Get out!" "It's a shareholder meeting," Andrew said, walking to the head of the table. "And I still own 51% of the voting stock until this vote concludes. I have the floor." He looked at Etta. "Show them." Etta didn't hesitate. She connected her tablet to the room's casting system. The massive screen behind Edward flickered. Instead of a PowerPoint presentation, a video played. It was grainy footage from the warehouse, recovered from Lydia's backup. It showed Edward Harrington, standing, not in a wheelchair, shaking hands with Kovich. Audio. "Burn it all, Kovich. I want Andrew destitute. I want him to watch his empire turn to ash." The room gasped. Etta swiped the screen. A spreadsheet appeared. "This," Etta narrated, addressing the board, "is the ghost ledger. Edward didn't just try to frame Andrew. He stole from every single one of you. See column D? That's the dividend payout you were supposed to receive last quarter. It was routed to a shell company in the Seychelles, owned by Edward." The investors turned on Edward like a pack of wolves. "Is this true?" a hedge fund manager demanded, standing up. "It's a deep fake," Edward screamed, sweat pouring down his face. "She doctored it. She's a criminal." "And here," Etta continued, ignoring him, "is the payment confirmation for the arsenic planted in my apartment. Paid for by a credit card registered to—" She zoomed in. "Edward Harrington." Andrew leaned over the table, looking his uncle in the eye. "You got sloppy, Uncle," Andrew whispered. "You thought the help didn't matter. You thought a waitress couldn't read a ledger." The doors opened again. This time it was the FBI. "Edward Harrington," the lead agent announced. "You are under arrest for corporate fraud, arson, and conspiracy to commit murder." Edward slumped in his wheelchair, for real this time. As the agents cuffed him, he looked at Etta with pure hatred. "Who are you?" he hissed. Etta looked down at him. "I'm the error in your calculation." 6 months later. The snow was melting in Central Park, signaling the arrival of spring. The scandal of the Harrington affair had finally left the front pages, replaced by the skyrocketing stock price of Harrington Global. Andrew Harrington sat in his office, signing the final papers for the acquisition, the legitimate one this time. "Sir," his assistant buzzed in. "Your 7 p.m. reservation is confirmed." Andrew smiled. "Thank you." He left the office, but he didn't take the Maybach. He walked. The city felt different now, lighter. He arrived at l'Orangerie. The restaurant was as golden and opulent as ever. But tonight, the vibe was different. The staff seemed happier. The music was lighter. Andrew walked to the hostess stand. "Good evening, Mr. Harrington," the hostess said brightly. "Your table is ready." He was led not to the alcove, but to the center table, the best seat in the house. He sat down. A moment later, a figure approached. It wasn't a waiter. It was the owner. Etta Sullivan wore a tailored emerald dress that brought out the fire in her eyes. She held a bottle of vintage wine. "Good evening, Andrew," she said. "Good evening, Etta," Andrew replied. "Or should I say, Madam Proprietor." Andrew had tried to give Etta a check for $10 million after the trial. She had ripped it up. She told him she didn't want charity. She wanted equity. With the reputation she gained from the trial, every firm on Wall Street wanted to hire her. She had made her own fortune in 6 months, consulting on high-risk mergers, and the first thing she bought was l'Orangerie. "I hear you fired the manager," Andrew said, accepting the glass of wine. "Gustavo?" Etta swirled her glass. "I didn't fire him. I believe in second chances. Look." Andrew followed her gaze. Over near the kitchen doors, Gustavo was wearing a busboy's uniform, humbly scraping leftovers off a plate into a bin. He looked up, saw Etta, and quickly looked down, working faster. "He's learning the value of service," Etta said. "From the bottom up." Andrew chuckled. "You are cruel, Etta." "I'm efficient." Andrew took a sip of wine. He looked at the woman who had saved his life, his legacy, and his soul. "I have a vacancy," Andrew said suddenly. "My CFO retired last week. It pays well, and the boss is manageable." Etta smiled. She clinked her glass against his. "I'm flattered, Andrew. But I think I like being the one who serves the food. It's the only way to make sure no one is poisoning the soup." "Is that a no?" "It's a not yet," Etta said. "Besides, I have a new project." "Oh?" "I'm auditing the Federal Reserve next week." Andrew laughed, a genuine loud laugh that turned heads in the restaurant. "To us," Andrew said, "the billionaire and the waitress." "No," Etta corrected him, leaning in. "To the partners." They drank. Outside, the city lights twinkled, unaware that the two most dangerous people in New York were just having dinner. Andrew watched her. He knew he would never refuse to be served by her again. In fact, he knew with absolute certainty that he would spend the rest of his life trying to be worthy of sitting at her table. And that is how Etta Sullivan went from clearing tables to owning the table. It's a reminder that true power isn't about the suit you wear or the bank account you hold. It's about competence, integrity, and the courage to stand up when everyone else sits down. Andrew Harrington learned the hard way that you should never judge someone by their apron, because the person pouring your water might just be the only one smart enough to save your life. If you enjoyed this story of revenge, justice, and the ultimate comeback, please hit that like button. It helps the channel immensely. What would you have done if you were in Etta's shoes? Would you have saved Andrew or let him lose everything? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss our next story. Thanks for watching.